It's week one of the new Stitt administration. We're joined by Breonna Bailey and Aaron Brillbeck. We'll talk all about it. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 sessions. Hey, everybody.
One big party.
Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
Big-time journalist today.
I see that. I see that. We're in the presence of greatness.
It's absolutely true.
And so is she.
Oh, stop. Yeah.
Look at all the
Hi, Brianna.
hamburgers over here.
Hi.
Hamburgers.
Who wants to start? Stitt week one. What do you think?
Well, I think he's, off to a start. He's already, made the motions to talk about one of his campaign promises, which was, giving him more power over agency heads, hiring and firing. So it's not even, he hasn't been in office even like a full week, and he's already starting. We're off to a start.
His inauguration speech, though, there was no surprise here. It was very much like a lot of his stumping speeches. It was rah, 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 go team, we're going to be top 10. That should have been the drinking game, by the way. Every time he says top 10, you pop a shot. But yeah, there were no surprises. I didn't expect any for this speech, but I think we're probably going to see them for his State of the State, which is upcoming in February.
Like you, I was frustrated. Like you, I am motivated. I see untapped potential. I see opportunity. I see great men and women around me. I see promises to be kept. I see jobs. I see progress. I see a top 10 Oklahoma. I know it's possible because I spent the past 18 months traveling the state, listening to Oklahomans in all 77 counties, holding more than 300 town halls, knocking on the doors of strangers, and learning the platform and the mandate that Oklahomans wanted for their next governor. Here's what I heard. We know we can be and should be a top 10 state. Why? Because we are Oklahoma, proud of our hardworking, God-fearing people. It is because of Oklahoma's work ethic that in Lawton, one of Goodyear's largest tire manufacturing facilities in the world is located. That American Airlines has its largest maintenance and repair facility in the world in Tulsa. That we are the birthplace of companies like Quick Trip, Hobby Lobby, and Sonic. It's because of Oklahoma's work ethic that our farmers and ranchers are the top 5 in the nation in the production of beef cattle, wheat, canola, cotton, and pecans. We are Oklahoma, proud of our natural resources, from abundant water in the east to oil, natural gas, and wind energy that stretches across the west. It's this entrepreneurial spirit and innovation with our resources that allowed Oklahoma to play a leading role in making America energy independent.
I was reading Ben Felder this morning, and he was saying the first cabinet meeting was like that. It was more like a group of executives getting together and getting done, and then because they got to get out the door, because people in the private sector hate meetings, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you have this cabinet meeting. I'm just wondering what your general thoughts are about the team he's assembled, and there's still some pretty big shoes to be filled because we haven't seen anything about health department, right? The $30 million health department, 47th worst in the nation. So your thoughts about the team, Brianna?
I mean, it seems like he's going with kind of a combination of, Oklahoma political figures who've been in it before, and also he's got some people who are more, outsiders, people who've been in business, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. Running a business is not the same as running government. And yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting new things. It'll be interesting to see how they parse out conflicts of interest with business holdings, things like that. The AG's office is still reviewing Stitt's plan to kind of disengage from his business, and I really haven't seen real answers about how he's going to do that with avoiding conflicts of interest.
Yeah, and it's important to note, he was the one that reached out to the AG's office and said, hey, take a look at this. This is my huge plan as far as moving away from the company. And am I doing anything legal or illegal? Am I doing it right? Am I crossing the T's, dotting the I's? So it sounds like he's going the right way with it. As far as the group that he's brought in, Matt Pinnell, I thought was a lieutenant governor, really, really good choice for tourism. Tourism needs some help.
If you heard me during the campaign, you know how passionate I am about tourism. I firmly believe that as a state, you got to play to your strengths. You have to play to your strengths as a state, and tourism is a strength. It's a growing economic force in Oklahoma. Tourism is. We know some of the statistics, third largest industry, but state tax collection from tourism has jumped over 20% since 2010. So this is a clear strength in Oklahoma as we look for more revenue. Why don't you start with an agency that's actually creating revenue for the state of Oklahoma? The advertising that we've done, not just in Oklahoma, but across the country and across the world is working. We need to maximize that effort and put a brand together. So this is a Secretary of Tourism and Branding. The governor and I have talked a lot about that brand and instilling some pride in our 4 million citizens in this state around a new branding campaign as well that certainly in the weeks and months ahead we'll be meeting together on.
Do you remember those hearings last year at the Capitol? Because there was the health hearings. Representative Josh Cockcroft had these hearings, and then they brought tourism in, okay? And there were a couple of these bureaucrats at tourism, and one of them was talking about, well, people don't like me because I'm large. It was some very bizarre, you remember that stuff?
It was weird, man.
And I've not seen, the messages, and you all have sources, right? I've never seen over the years, I've seen more messages from employees at tourism going, this bureaucracy, these people that are above us are idiots. I mean, those sorts of words. And I know that they've been overjoyed. I just get these messages. We're overjoyed that Kevin Stitt's there. And when the Pinnell announcement went, there was a party over there. It was like the French on June 6, 1944. Just, it can't be overstated about how happy some of these state employees are that some of these people that have been there for a long time are leaving.
And that tells me that there's a need for change. Stitt has been talking about from day one on the campaign trail that he wants to find where the fat is and cut that fat out. And I think this is step one in doing that. He's going to find out where people are not doing the jobs they should be doing, and I think he's going to be pretty effective as far as cutting that down a little bit and probably saving us some money. Is it going to save us enough money that it's going to fulfill all the needs that we have in terms of all the people that put their hands out as soon as we announce we've got $800 million extra dollars, translation closer to $400 million? No, not even close. But are we going to see some cuts? Are we going to see some slimming down? I think so.
Brianna, you write a lot about social services, rural hospitals. Do you see the team being assembled? For example, I've seen there was some rumors that Steve Buck's going to be named the not public safety, but social services secretary, whatever that's going to turn out to be. Your viewpoint about what's happening in the rural areas with healthcare and the folks that are being assembled?
You know, I think it's going to be a reality check. I mean, I hear all this talk of, you know, oh, we're going to audit these agencies and find out where the fat is, and I think it's going to be a reality check when they realize, you know, the fat was cut years ago and now we're down to bone, and that's where a lot of the problems are. You know, rural hospitals are really struggling because the reimbursement rates have been cut. We didn't take the matching dollars from the state, from federal government to expand health care here in Oklahoma. And you know, we're seeing the ramifications of that.
Stitt has said he's not going to take those dollars. You think he's going to change his mind?
I think he really needs to reconsider, or it could get to the point where we see like you know, initiative petition effort to get on the ballot.
I think that's probably the direction that it's going to go. I think that's going to be Stitt's way out, because he, as a businessman, he knows that that's a heck of a good investment. You invest $100 million, you get $900 million back. Who wouldn't take that? So I think that Stitt knows that it's going to wind up being an initiative petition. It's going to go to a vote of the people, and the people, I think, are going to pass it overwhelmingly.
Who's going to run that?
Kind of hard to say. If I had to put money on it, I'd bet Joe Dorman.
Okay, let me ask you this. We've seen some talk in Washington that they might want to try to block grant Medicaid to the states. Now, I know the Democrats, they flipped out over that one, right? But Oklahoma needs this federal money. Do you have to call it? I don't want to be too tricky here. Do you have to
I know
call
where
it
you're
Medicaid
going.
expansion? I mean, do you have to take? Is that? I've not seen any real expository stories about what particularly the name means. Are there ways to get federal money without calling it Medicaid expansion? If you know what I'm
I mean,
cooking here.
I guess if that would make it more palatable. I mean, I guess you could call it, the helping keep rural Oklahoma hospitals open money,
Yeah.
and it would be the same thing. I mean,
But these people, here's the thing. Let me see if I'm completely off my rocker on this one. There are a lot of people behind the scenes go, we can't have Medicaid expansion, but in the back room they'll tell you, we need that money.
Yeah.
I
Okay?
know.
And a lot of it's-
That's politics, right?
And you're right, it's got to be how they market it. I don't care. Call it cherry cupcakes if you want to. Just bring us the money.
What a way to run a business.
What a way to run a
Yeah.
business. And I think that's what Stitt's frustration is going to be, because he's used to business, like you said. I mean, it's fast paced. It's let's fix it now, and I'm the guy who's going to fix it because I'm the boss applesauce. And I think that he's going to see that things are much, much different in a bureaucracy, much in the way that President Trump is seeing that in Washington. I think that Stitt is going to see that at a much smaller level, that he's coming in guns ablaze and ready to make some changes, only to find out that it's difficult to make change in politics.
What do you think is the first big crisis that they're facing, that they're not talking a lot about right now? When February 1st gets here, February 4th, I think, is when the new legislature comes down. It's an interesting time. They're sworn in, but they're not in session. What do you think are some of the things they're going to have to address that they probably would not be the favorite thing to do?
Well, I think education. He ran on giving teachers another raise, improving Oklahoma's education system without raising taxes, and I haven't really seen a lot of answers of how they're going to do that. I mean, I hear audit things, cut the fat, but it's all vague. This kind of vague. Telling voters what they want to hear. We're gonna audit everything and cut the fat but no specifics.
Right, and that's been Stitt's MO since day one, is there aren't very many specifics. You mentioned education. They've got to find the money to fund the raises that they put into place last year before they can start
Yes.
talking about funding new raises. Because a lot of that money was one-time money. A lot of that money is spent on other things. And that was one of the issues that the teachers brought up. They said, we want to make sure not only are we getting the $6,000 raise, but that we're consistently getting the raise, and that's not going to be cut in subsequent years. And we still haven't heard details in terms of where that money is going to be coming from for those $6,000 raises. So if we're talking more raises on top of that, we're talking a lot of money. And keep in mind too, Stitt is also saying that he doesn't want to tap into this quote unquote extra money that we have. He wants to have a $2 billion rainy day fund.
If it's actually going to be there.
Yeah, we're far from that $2 billion fund right now if we didn't spend anything above and beyond what we spent last year, and we're going to have to spend additional funds. Other things that we're going to have to keep an eye on. I'm sure health department, we got to watch that like a hawk. Now with this huge data breach that we saw this past week, there are questions in terms of how secure our data is. Somebody left the door wide open on that one. It wasn't reported for, what did they say, 3 weeks? And that door's
Sounds
been
like the
open.
Lindsay story.
Yeah, that door's been open for months. Anybody who wants to see this stuff can see it.
Bureaucrats. When something bad happens, you got to do something about it. Can't wait around 3 weeks. We were talking about education and people understanding what's going on. What we've decided to do this week is Brianna and Mr. Birbeck are going to give us a lesson on the state funding formula. No, don't turn off the TV. Okay. But here's my point. We see this rhetoric about education and what needs to be done, but very few people understand where the money comes from. Let me just give you an example. A really great school system, in my opinion here, not too far away, is Luther High School, okay, where I've got a senior. They're the state 2A academic football champions, by the way. I mean, that's smart kids out there. A bond issue just went down. Got over 50%, right?
It was a big bond issue.
Big bond issue, and they needed that big bond issue, okay? So we see the rhetoric coming from some of the teacher groups, advocates saying, well, everybody's ready to go. Well, not in Luther, okay? It didn't happen out there, right? So the difference between what is said and what people represent the people are ready for and what they're actually doing, it's a big gulf, isn't it?
Yeah. And Stitt has talked about making changes to the funding formula. It's not as easy as just making changes to the funding formula, but he's talked about doing that, to use property taxes, for example, for more things than just capital improvements. Because we see these little tiny school districts that have 20, 30 kids in them, and they've got a football stadium that rivals what OU has. We don't need that. What we need is better books in the classrooms. What we need is computers. What we need is teachers being paid competitive wages. So to heck with a football stadium, let's start focusing on the important stuff.
I think the Rams looked at Owasso before they moved to Los Angeles. I mean, have you seen that facility up there?
It's amazing.
It's like an NFL facility. It's great.
amazing,
By the way.
but
congratulations. They're paying for it, but
wow. The kids are thumbing through textbooks that talk about how great it would be one day if we finally landed on the moon. So, yeah, I mean, we're putting our money in the wrong places there. So there needs to be some changes with the funding formula.
You know, the moon landing was faked.
Oh, it was totally fake.
Yeah.
Totally fake.
You just watch The Shining or all those. All right, back to reality. So they're going to be, the legislature is in town in 2 weeks. You've got, by the way, you're going to have the leadership in the legislature has really run things for the past several years. I mean, they've been the alpha dogs, right?
Right.
So now you have a governor who comes in who's charismatic, who's very popular. Look at the election returns. How do you think that's going to work out? How much feeling out is going to happen with the new leadership and the new governor before you see a well-oiled machine? Or will it be like what's happened in Washington in the last 2 years, where you had Republicans running everything, couldn't get anything done?
I think it's been a dysfunctional situation at the state capitol for the past, many years, and maybe some new leadership in the governor's office will help that, at least, change some of the mindset down there of dysfunction and gridlock. But, there's a lot of the same faces in the legislative leadership also.
I see it going one of two different ways. I mean, when you're talking with legislative leadership, you've got on the House side McCall, very, very strong personality. You've got Treat on the Senate side, very, very strong personality. And these two guys, even though they're both Republicans, we've seen in the past, they clash. You've got a brand new governor who comes in. I think he's going to go one of two ways. He's either going to come in guns a-blazing, I'm the new sheriff in town, or he's going to slowly, test the waters by putting his toe in, see how much he can do and get away with. 'Cause keep in mind, the governor in Oklahoma doesn't have a whole lot of power. Most of his power comes behind the scenes.
Bully pulpit, too.
Yep, exactly.
If he chooses to use it.
Which he hasn't thus far.
Right.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that. My suspicion is he's going to go in very slowly. He's going to let the legislature kind of do its thing. And if there's something that he doesn't like, he's going to take it up with them behind closed doors. I don't think you're going to see the bully pulpit used very often at all. None of these three guys are the type who really like to bring things out until they've got success.
Last question I'd like to ask you both is Representative Dunnington and Leader Echols authored the bill came out this week, State Question 780 go retroactive. Criminal justice reform in Oklahoma, I'm not sure anybody really understands it to a great detail. There are advocacy groups that try to push the narrative. Then there are I think there's the smart on crime folks, and then make no mistake, there's the soft on crime folks. Mm-hmm. When you start seeing people trying to do away with failure to protect laws and stuff like that. I mean, there are people out there who have a lot of different motives that they're not right up front about. With the Echols-Dunnington bill, if you had a chance to look at it, or if you haven't, where do you see, is this session actually going to have some real movement on criminal justice reform?
In a word, yes. I think with both Dunnington and Echols backing this bill, I think it's going to pass. And the way that it's worded, criminal justice reform, it's kind of like you hit it on the head. Criminal justice reform is a bumper sticker. It's a slogan. Everybody wants criminal justice reform. Nobody knows to what degree. And there's going to be varying degrees of it. Where do we draw the line? In this case, though, I think that most people would agree that if you're a nonviolent offender who has a history of drug use and abuse, most of us would much rather see you going through treatment than being locked away in prison. So I think it's going to pass pretty easily. Then the question is, where do we go from there? Do we build Joe Albaugh his $800 million prisons, or do we start looking at emptying the prisons we've got?
Yeah, I think the fact that this bill is a bipartisan effort is going to be, really enhance its chances of passing and becoming law. The problem in years past is that the district attorneys have really, really fought back against these measures that would make 780 retroactive. And I think they kind of see it as an infringement on their power and their authority. And they're just as strong and influential at the Capitol as they've always been. That's going to be the fight to watch, is what do the DAs do?
Agreed, but DAs are also, it's an elected position. And they're feeling the winds right now. They're figuring out what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing if they want to be reelected. And I think the large majority of Oklahomans want to see some kind of justice reform, regardless of how you fill in the blanks with what that slogan means to you. 780, 781, these are certainly things that people were backing. They want to see this change. So I think that the DAs are going to be on board with it. Reluctantly, but I think they're going to be on board with it.
I'm still waiting for some of the advocates to tell me how many people are in prisons on what would be misdemeanor drug possession, and that's only. And when I hear these numbers,
Thousands.
like thousands,
There's thousands.
and then I'll have others. It's not that many. So that's the one I'm looking forward to hearing.
And
because
what I've
corrections is going to be involved in this, right?
What I've heard for answers with that, though, is that it's very seldom do you find somebody who's just there on marijuana. Usually it's marijuana and theft, marijuana and assault. I mean, there are a number of different things that they're on. So just finding somebody who's only there on marijuana. I tried looking for somebody, spoke with the Department of Corrections to find me that one person, and they weren't able to find me that one person that's just there serving time on a marijuana. So just marijuana might be difficult.
So let me see if I can clarify as we close. To find somebody just in the penitentiary on possession doesn't mean that they're not there on possession. They were sent there on possession, but they might have had some other charges that the DA didn't send them up on. I would say it's very complicated to figure out how they're being sentenced and why, right?
Right, but with this bill, what it would do is if I'm doing time on marijuana and theft and burglary and a few other things, they're just going to nix the marijuana aspect of it, so my time might drop from 7 years to 4 years.
I maybe have not talked to somebody who's been sentenced to prison for marijuana, but I can tell you I've talked to a woman in prison who was sentenced to 15 years for possession of meth, and I mean she was a meth addict, and that
was all that was in the jacket, sort of.
Exactly.
Well, it's going to be an interesting discussion. In the past, it seemed as if the advocates were louder than what was really when the rubber meets the road facts. It's been very difficult to follow, but we've got Erin Brillbeck and Breonna Bailey following it. So, hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
To know more about Frontier, you go where?
Readfrontier.org.
And to find Breonna Bailey.
I'm BriOKC, BRIOKC on Twitter.
And as always, Erin Brillbeck, who's a Facebook guy. You like it better than Twitter, right?
I do. I'm old-fashioned. I'm the Facebook. I like the book of face.
You had me at old. Okay, appreciate it. Hey, appreciate you watching. Follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter. Thanks for watching News 9 Sessions with Mitchell Talks. We are so happy you're with us. See you next week.